Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Committee of the Whole meeting on October 8th, 2024. We welcome everyone here today and all those watching online. I will start with a roll call of council. I, Councillor Burgess, am present and chairing this meeting. Mayor Shantz,
Present.
Councillor Bryant,
Present.
Councillor Cadeau,
Present.
Councillor Grant,
Present.
and Councillor Schwint.
Present.
Before we get going on the agenda items, council needs to reconvene to open session. Do we have a motion to reconvene? All right, moved by Councillor Bryant and seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? And that's carried. I want to acknowledge the land on which we live has been here from time immemorial, and that Indigenous people have lived here from time immemorial. I thank the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people who have lived here and cared for this land and who continue to share and steward this land with us. May we together learn to care for each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. Do any council members have any declarations of pecuniary interest? All right, seeing none. We have one item to come forward from closed session, the pre-budget approval for additional IT security services. Does anyone want to move that? All right, so moved by Councillor Grant and seconded by Councillor Cadeau. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. We have no public meetings, no presentations, and we do have some delegations. Tonight we have one delegation, and I will review the guidelines for participating. On this section of the agenda, delegates have 7 minutes unless council or the clerk has set a different amount of time. After you speak, please wait for questions from council. Once there are no further questions, you may return to your seat. You can leave anytime if you wish, or if you are more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. Before we hear from the delegate, we ask Economic Development and Tourism Officer Jenna DeBoer to present her report on collaborative marketing opportunities for St. Jacobs. Please go ahead, Jenna, when you're ready.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess, and good evening, Council, Mayor Shantz. Nice to see you all again. It's been a while. The report tonight outlines an exciting opportunity to collaborate on marketing efforts with some of Woolwich's key tourism destinations during the holiday season. We've been working with the industry to find a collaborative approach to promote tourism in the township, and staff feel confident that this holiday campaign will boost tourism during the winter months, both for locals and visitors from places like the GTA, Hamilton, and London. Further, staff are eager to develop a strategy around the municipal accommodation tax so we can present a budget to council and therefore minimize multiple requests as projects come up. I think with that, I'll leave it short and sweet, but if there's any questions from council, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Jenna. Council, do we have any questions for her? All right, seeing none, thank you for that, Jenna. I will move on to our delegate. We welcome Delegate Dan Vandermolen, owner of Change Lifestyle and Apparel. Please come up and you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'm also the chair of the BIA for St. Jacobs, so that is part of the reason I'm here. I have voted to go with chicken scratches in my writing instead of typing it out, so it may be a little messy. I apologize. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. One of the topics that we discussed last evening in our BIA meeting in St. Jacobs was our upcoming Sparkles event. So to tie on to Jenna's discussion about enhancing the events through this Christmas season, one of the challenges and discussions revealed last night was the limitations of our budget to put on an enhanced Sparkles event. I'd like to ask council to consider an additional $5,800 towards money that could be passed on to be used for this current Sparkles event, giving us the opportunity to put on an even greater success for this event. So there has been a very big rumor that there's a significant amount of money in the MAT tax sitting around, so that was part of what Jenna's saying. So we are hoping that we can figure out a way to engage and be able to show you where we would put that money. This is how we would allocate the funds for this year's Sparkles event, specifically what that $5,800 represents. Our Sparkles tree program. Last year you had 42 trees from John's Nursery lit up and through the village, lit up and sparkling. We are currently using $1,000 of our budget to subsidize that cost for the trees, and then asking the local businesses to pay for that portion to enhance the trees. And we would ask that the council be considered to match that, the BIA funds of $1,000, freeing up more money for the local businesses to actually be able to decorate their stores and be able to light and make sure that the event goes well through that process. This not only enhances the Sparkles event for the 2 weeks that we go, but it also, those trees can stay right through to Christmas, which actually draws people all the way through to the Christmas season to come into the village and be able to continue that on. The second area that the money would be was for our horse-drawn carriage initiative. We're actually very excited to be able to have the horse-drawn carriages back. For a number of years and post-COVID, there was reasons that we couldn't have it done. We are able to fund Friday evening and Saturday evening for 2 hours at a time, but the Sunday daytime is very much a family-oriented activity, but we don't have the funds as the bulk of the people come on the evenings because it is a lit-up Sparkles event, but the whole thing goes through Sunday. So we would like to ask council to consider $1,600 to be able to do offer that experience to families on the Sunday afternoon for each of the week. Each week costs $800. That covers the cost of the people, the horses, the safety, all the pieces that go with that. So that would be the use for that money. The cost of the visitors is $0. We don't charge for that, but it is an experience that is priceless as far as people that are not from this region being able to see that. And then lastly, the other funds would be from for a music program that we are doing. So what is the holiday season without the amazing music? We have carolers booked for every night that walk the streets. However, it's impossible to have carolers be able to fill both ends and the entirety of the street at the same time. So we would like to request 6 evenings, Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening, at $500 for each evening, which covers the cost of live musicians to be able to offset the carolers on one end so we can have live musicians on the other end, so that the entire village for the entirety of the evening program can actually be enhanced by the music, the lighting, the entire process of the festival. So then just a little bit of data, just as to understand what we're talking about and what we are working with that comes into the village. Through Propulso, through RTO4, we had a study that was done in 2023. So there were 344,000 visitors that came to the St. Jacobs Village in the month of November. 91,000 of them were unique visitors. So that's 91,000 individuals, many of them returning because they do like the village, coming back and forth. So we're, as compared to 42,000 unique visitors in the month of January. So we're more than doubling in the month of November. This obviously is a very enhanced or very well-known activity. And so we want to make sure we can continue to offer all the pieces all the way through the multiple nights. And the Sparkles website last year had 45,000 unique visits just checking out the event. Half of those 91,000, in case you're wondering, come from 48% to 52% come from outside of the 40 kilometers, and the other portions come within inside the 40 kilometers. So this event draws from all over Southern Ontario, and it is an event that the town has put together, and it has been significantly growing, although, as we all know, COVID did a lot of damages to a lot of things, and we are trying to enhance this and bring it back to be able to have enough funds to be able to make sure that we have an exceptional event and then continue year after year now to continue to grow it. And so that's what we are looking for. So just again, to reiterate, the total ask is for $5,800, $1,000 for the illuminated tree program, $1,800 for the horse drawn experience, $3,000 to fulfill the actual every evening of live music that will be offsetting the other parts. We would appreciate your support to enhance this tourism draw within Woolwich Township and continue to build on the success of the hardworking businesses in the St. Jacobs Village. Appreciate your time.
All right, thanks a lot for that presentation there, Dan, and for the work you do for the community and putting on this event. Council, do you have any questions? Councillor Schwinn.
So thanks for that presentation, Dan. One of the things I've enjoyed being on council is sitting on the St. Jacobs BIA. It's amazing when you get volunteers together, how much can be done on so little funding and overhead. It's an organization that comes together, does a lot for a small town. It's really impressive. So I think anything we as a township can do to enhance people coming to the village of St. Jacobs, the market, entire area is something we should consider. So I guess a question from your presentation, I don't know if it's fair for you, Dan, or maybe Jenna or Director of Finance, how much money is in the MAT fund, I'm going to call it, and what have we spent the last few years in St. Jacobs area?
Who would like to touch on that? Would you know, Jenna? Or- Go ahead.
Sure, through you, Councillor Schwint. So unless, actually, I see that our Director of Finance is available to chat too. But over the last few years, we have not been digging very deeply into that municipal accommodation tax because we don't have a strategy for how to spend it. So I don't have the exact numbers of what we've pulled out of there so far. The second half of my report talks about the fact that we need to build out that strategy, so we're spending it in a smart way. But currently, I will just, if I may, Colm, pass it on to you to let us know where the value is sitting at in there.
Sure, thanks, Jenna, and through the chair. So as of the end of 2023, we had a balance of $767,000 in the MAT tax reserve fund, which is a very significant amount. I don't know exactly how much is in there. It's all based on hotel stays, so it's kind of an unpredictable revenue source, but I think it's fair to say that number's much higher, probably over 100,000 higher. And to Jenna's point, I don't have the exact numbers of what was spent out of that reserve, but it's been quite minimal. As far as I can recall, only a few thousand, maybe in the tens of thousands. So there's still quite a significant balance in there.
Mr. Brenneman?
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Chair, to council. So I'll use this opportunity to set some additional background and context. So the municipal accommodation tax came into play in 2019 for all of the area municipalities, 3 cities and the 4 townships. As we know, what happened in 2020, COVID hit. And the reality of that is all of the municipalities now coming out the other side of COVID are saying, hey, money was still coming in over that time period, not as significant as what we see on a regular basis now on an annual basis. But all of the municipalities are looking like we are to develop strategies around developing plans to ensure the wise investment of these funds and possible collaborations and partnerships that exist. I mean, ultimately, it would be our hope that as we go through the annual budget process, that we would have had certain discussions ahead of time with our partners and collaborators to be able to set aside funds that, you know, that you would approve so that we know what we're setting aside and using from the fund. And so we wouldn't have to come for one-offs or multiple times to council to deal with that from a big picture standpoint. I can tell you, I can tell you of examples through COVID and even out the other side. We have, you know, to Colm and Jenna's point, used it for limited circumstances. You'll recall council has been approving, I think, roughly $10,000 a year to help with making available washrooms for the public within the village of St. Jacobs. As well during COVID, there was some requests for support for funding that were open. We supported Drayton to the tune of, I think, $25,000 to help deal with their closure during that time and help get the other side of COVID. But again, it's been limited. Jenna maybe can answer it. I thought we also may have used some of the funds for the canoe launch. Did we use the funds for the canoe launch in Westmount Rose, Jenna? For signage?
You know what? I can't
It's okay.
Yeah, I
It's,
apologize. I can't recall.
Well,
I think you're right though, David.
it's, again, it's been limited. Yeah, just to, Dan, your point, I did have a meeting with Craig Miller the other day, on this topic, and I made it clear. I mean, no need for rumors. The availability of what's in our reserve funds is available to anyone. And yeah, it is a significant amount of money right now that's sitting there. Now don't hold me to this, but one of the things we're trying to forecast now that we're out the other side of COVID, what might be coming into that fund. What we're starting to see coming out the other side is probably $250,000 to $300,000 a year. So obviously you can see that there will be significant amount of funds going into that reserve fund, which just reinforces, to Jenna's point, that we need to develop a strategy around the wise investment of this. And again, look for partnerships and collaboration opportunities. And I also would, take the opportunity, to mention that from a big picture standpoint, what we're also mindful of is that the region, the 3 cities and the 4 townships are all part of a regional tourism marketing collaborative with the Waterloo Region Tourism Marketing Collaborative, which goes under the brand Explore Waterloo Region. And one of the things we're all mindful of always is that what we're all trying to steer towards, working together in collaboration and partnership, is to extend the amount of tourists and stays that people have in the region. Obviously, ultimately, that is the ultimate goal. We want more tourists coming to the area, but we also want tourists staying longer. Ultimately, then there's direct and indirect benefits that come in terms of hotel stays, restaurants, retail purchases, things of that nature, and the ultimate economic development benefit that comes from that. So just wanted to set that additional context. And, we certainly look forward to the Delegate Dan's point, ongoing discussions with our partners, the likes of the BIA, the Market District, the Schlegel family, and other partners, that we may consult with, throughout the process.
Thank you. Councilor Bryant?
Thank you. I just want to get some clarity on the Woolwich Mat Fund. Is this strictly from our 4 hotels, or do we share it regional wide, like all the hotels, and then it gets split up, or how exactly does that work?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilor Bryant. So the way it was set up is that Explore Waterloo Region gets 50% and we get 50%. So whatever's collected at the 5 hotels that we have is split 50% that way. We also generously worked out an arrangement with the region where a certain percentage also goes to them for some of their investment in some of the festivals and events and tourism organizations. So that's how the split works. But I would take this opportunity to note that Woolwich is in a very unique and fantastic position. None of the other townships are in the position of us to have the nature of hotels and the nature of investment. If you looked at the finances that come in for the 3 cities, for example, certainly us and Waterloo are comparable in terms of what's being taken in with respect to the tourism accommodation tax.
Any other questions for the delegate specifically? Yeah, Councilor Cadeau.
I'll start with the comment that I think this is what we should be using the mat tax for. But I guess the question is, we have a report in front of us with a recommendation, $20,000. And we'd heard from a delegate who's asking for a little over 5,000, if I'm not mistaken. So is that a combined ask of like 25, or is that 5 kind of absorbed within the 20?
No, the request from us would be in addition to the information from Jenna.
Perfect.
This was yeah.
So that would be my question for the delegate. Thank you for that answer. That's helpful. The question for staff would be, could we accommodate this within that mat tax?
Yes.
All right, any other questions for the delegate? All right, thanks a lot, Dan. You can grab a seat and you're more than welcome to stay to the end, or you can leave now.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
All right, council, so we have a recommendation in our report here. Would someone like to move that before we discuss it? You want to move it? Or do you want us to?
I'll move with amendment with the additional $5,800 to the BAA for their Sparkles campaign. I think this is an opportunity where we as a township can support an organization that's nimble and provide services quickly that we as a township can't. It's providing funding for the use of that reserve fund and will be money well spent. And longer term, I fully support the need to have that policies and strategy developed. We don't have that in place yet, so let's start this year and carry on to bigger and better things.
All right, Council Grant.
Councillor Schwent beat me to it, but I'll second his motion.
Sounds good. So on the floor, we have approved 25,800, was it? As a contribution to the 2024 St. Jacobs Holiday Campaign from the Matt tax, and direct staff to develop a strategy for the ongoing and long-term use of the municipal accommodation tax.
Thank you. I too think this is good use of the MAT tax. I think this is what it's for. I'm also aware that I've had some discussions with Elmira BIA, and so I hope that part of the strategy is looking at how we can support tourism in the broader community as well, and recognizing that the hotels are all in the St. Jacobs Market area, and so yeah, they definitely should get some benefit from that.
Any other discussion? Clerk Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to confirm the resolution was, I think I understood the mover correctly, but it's the $20,000 for the 2024 St. Jacobs Holiday Campaign and $5,800 for the BIA for their Sparkles event, both coming from the municipal accommodation tax. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other discussion? All right, I'll call that to vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, we have no unfinished business. We have no consent items. We have one item pulled from the information package at the request of Mayor Shantz. Would the mayor like to speak to that?
This is a motion that was brought to regional council, and my understanding is that it was crafted in collaboration with the Big City Mayors group that put it together. Basically, it's an ask for the provincial government to provide support for particularly for housing and mental health and addictions. And they've asked the area municipalities to take a look at it and to support it. And so I would move that we endorse this motion that was put before regional council.
Someone like to second that? Councillor Cadeau, any discussion or comments on that?
I'll second it and just add that homelessness, mental health, addictions aren't just things that affected the big cities. So thank you, Mayor, for bringing this forward. This is something that impacts residents in our community. Absolutely. And I would echo the call that I'm reading to solve the crisis. We need partners at various levels of government. So happy to second this motion.
Any other comments or discussion? Councillor Schwent?
For sure, this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem across Ontario, and we're not immune to it. I'm trying to understand the letter, though, in that it's being addressed to the Prime Minister, asking the province to do a whole bunch of things. So are we, or is it to the Prime Minister and the province, and trying to get all parties involved? Just trying to understand the intent more.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. The first part is talking about the Ontario funding, and actually that you're right. This request is to the federal government. actually, it's calling on the federal and provincial government to work together to solve the problem. And although it's addressed to the Prime Minister, it is going to the Premier as well, so.
I just want to add that it copies and calls on local area MPs, MPPs, and heads of council. So really calling on that multi-tier approach to this complex, multifaceted issue, which is what we need. So I appreciate the concern, target audience, etc. Hopefully this gets into the hands of all of these decision makers.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Mayor Shantz, for bringing that forward. I'll call that the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, on the staff reports and memos. Next, we have Engineering Project Supervisor Ryan Tucker and the consultant Dwayne Linder of Associated Engineering Limited to present the report on East Side Lands Sanitary Servicing Environmental Assessment. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Shantz, Woolwich Council. Good to see you this evening. I'm just going to do a quick intro to the report, and then Dwayne Linder, who's with me here from Associated Engineering, he's going to do a presentation for Council, and then we'll both field any questions that Council may have. We have the report in front of Council this evening for the East Side Land Sanitary Servicing Environmental Assessment. The environmental assessment was undertaken with the goal to determine sanitary servicing for the broader East Side lands within the Township of Woolwich, with the intent to basically provide servicing for the area, which would provide shovel-ready lands for future development, and would also allow for expansion of existing industry in that area as well, which would provide the benefit of increased jobs for Woolwich. Staff are looking for Council to endorse the preferred alternative number 7, as well as the associated sanitary station location on Jetliner Court. This is the major trunk sewer that would allow, again, the sanitary servicing of the area. And then upon approval of that by Council, staff would look to issue the notice of study completion for the environmental assessment, which triggers the 30-day public review period where people can come in, review the report, and work with staff to address any concerns. And then following that, we'd look to issue the geotech RFQ, request for quotation, to proceed with geotech work this year into next year to proceed with detailed design of the project. Just for Council's consideration, we did have a budget approved in the 2024 capital budget for that work, but we'd look for Council's approval to proceed just due to the dollar amount because of the procurement policy. So with that, I'll have Dwayne come up and do the presentation, then we'll take any questions from Council. Good evening, through you, Chair Burgess and Mayor Shantz. Thank you for having us here this evening. If I may, in the spirit of this weekend's upcoming Thanksgiving, I'd like to say thank you for letting us work on this project. It's been a lot of fun, and working with the project team has been an awesome experience for us. Do I have the clicker or do you? Oh, sorry. Perfect, thank you. Oh, too far. So this has been an interesting project in that there's been a lot of moving parts for it. I will do my best to keep this presentation as brief as possible. Ryan can kick me if it gets too much into the weeds. But what we'll do is we'll give you an overview of some of the kind of the constraints and existing conditions that I think most of us are familiar with, but some of the key features of the study area. We'll look at the alternatives that we considered and then the recommendation for the preferred solution. So just this project built from an original study for the East Side lands that the region started actually in 2013. We finally finished it in 2018. That's a longer story, but that study established the long-term strategy for sanitary servicing for the East Side lands, which included a large trunk sewer coming from the Kitchener wastewater treatment plant all the way up to and through the Woolwich lands, although the details of that weren't vetted as part of that study. Some preliminary planning work was done, but then this project was established and called in, I think, early 2023 to try to
answer the question of how does the Woolwich portion of the sanitary servicing feed into that larger overall servicing strategy. At the same time, the airport, the Regional Waterloo Airport, also has a vested interest in this project, and they have been partners on the EA study because of the airport operations, their long-term plans for growth, their master plan, which they did in 2017 and are in the process of updating now, and their need for sanitary servicing as well. So some of the key stakeholders, certainly the focus of this, like I said, this project is part of a larger project, but this particular study is specifically for the Woolwich lands and trying to understand how do we get the servicing for that. The existing community of Breslau, which currently has sanitary servicing, that is goes to the Victoria Street pumping station for this with the City of Kitchener through an agreement that we have with them. But that's got its limits, and we won't be able to develop more of the existing study area without a broader solution. And there's also a number of other key stakeholders. The City of Cambridge to the south as the owners of the receiving sewer when all is said and done. Certainly some of the local industries within the study area, and of course, the region of Waterloo and the airport that we already mentioned. The problem statement, this study started off as relatively straightforward. We thought of just looking at a pumping station or a lift station down at the south bottom end of the study area. As we evolved, and especially as the ROPA 6 decision came in early 2023, mid 2023, that expanded the study area where we started to understand that this isn't just about a pumping station. This is about a broader servicing strategy for the entire almost 3,000 hectares of land that comprise the Woolwich portion of what we call the East Side lands. So the study area or the problem statement we defined, we won't read the whole long thing, but we're really focusing on the sanitary servicing infrastructure. And in particular, we're trying to focus, well, we have to look at the entire study area. We're focusing mostly on the area south of Menow Street, which I'll show you and give a bit more detail for. So that's what the immediate needs are. Would I be able to get a glass of water? Is that possible? Thank you. So just to kind of a bit of background. So the existing study area, thank you. The existing study area at the north half of it contains the village of Breslau, which has existing sanitary sewers. If you can see on the map, the red lines, those are existing sewers. They feed into the Victoria Street pumping station for the City of Kitchener. That yellow boundary, that's the former settlement boundary for Breslau, but that has all been expanded. That the flow rate of 189 liters per second that the existing Kitchener pumping station can handle, that's the most that we can get out of that, and it's not enough for the existing settlement boundary, or arguably barely, but certainly not for any of the planned growth into the larger study area. South of Menow Street, most of the land is currently vacant, but now slated for future development. And as we get to service that, there's some of the existing industries within the kind of that southern area of Breslau, but then also the airport property. You can see the airport, the red lines shown there, those are their existing sewers that have been there for a good number of years. They have no outlet. They basically have a pumper truck that comes to the airport several times a week to pump out their wet well because they have nowhere to discharge their wastewater to. So that's been a long-term problem that I know the region is keen to solve. Downstream, this is part of that larger solution. So coming up from all the way at the bottom end, the Kitchener wastewater treatment plant, the region of Waterloo is currently in the process of working on the detailed design for the trunk sewer that will come from the treatment plant across the Grand River, through the subdivision, up into the Cambridge lands. Cambridge has already constructed a portion of the sewer through their area, as well as an interim pumping station. And they're working on that last leg going along Middle Block Road. And then the region would extend the last piece up to Kossuth Road, up to the limits of the Woolwich boundary. So those works are all in different stages, but the design and construction of those is underway. The focus of this report now is to look at the Woolwich component of this. So one of the first things we had to do for the analysis that we went through was first figure out what's our design flow rate. Based on the previous study, we thought we were going to be somewhere in the order of 500 liters per second. But the design flow rate is basically, it's heavily influenced by the development area that's contributing to the infrastructure. And in the case of sanitary flows, it's really only the developable lands. So we didn't want to take the entire study area. We broke out the environmental constraint areas, which won't be developed realistically. The wetlands, the woodlots, any existing road right-of-ways won't be contributing additional or a significant additional sanitary flows. So we did it on a kind of comprehensive property by property basis. We looked at all of the properties. We worked with township planning to understand what the anticipated land uses would be. We made some educated not guesses, but based on some of the long-term planning and the ROPA 6 updates to the secondary plan that were evolving throughout this study to define what the land uses would be. Therefore, we could calculate what we thought the flows would be. We came up with a design flow rate of 679 liters per second, and that would be at the southwest corner, the downstream end of the Woolwich lands. The next step we had to do was figure out how this wastewater would get down to that point, down to the point where it would discharge into the regional trunk sewer. And for that, we had to make some assumptions. We understand that sanitary sewers generally, typically, will exist within existing road right-of-ways. Throughout the study area, there are a number of existing roads. There's a number of areas that are greenfield that don't have any roads. So we made some assumptions of where we think future roads might be. We're not trying to preclude that or pre-approve any of that, but we made some assumptions, and there's reasonable logic behind that of where we think the sanitary sewer will look like and how it will evolve over time to get from the southwest corner, the downstream end, all the way to the upstream corner in the northeast. So based on those assumptions and based on that network that we've developed, working with staff and understanding how the reasonable evolution of things would go, we then had to figure out, well, of all of these future sewers, which will be on the future roads for the most part, which one is the trunk sewer? Because that's where, if we're looking at a large pumping station, we want to attach that to the point where it's collecting the majority of the flow. So we had to understand which one of these sewer lines would be the trunk sewer. So of this network, we tested a total of 11 different alignments that we looked at, and with the undulating topography and all of the different constraints, creek crossings, all of the things that we had to understand of how things would work, we had to define which should we think would be the best alternative for, for the trunk sewer. So I want to make sure I'm keeping up with my notes here. With these alternatives, so there's really 4 kind of alignments, and alignments 3 and 4 had multiple variations of them. Basically, north of Meadow Street, it's the same. South of Meadow Street, they branch off into a couple of different options. And recognizing that everything needs to come down to that southwest corner as the trunk sewer is coming up Fountain Street where it hits Kossuth Road. This guy. So we tested a bunch of them. The first way we looked at it was we looked at the trunk sewer and we said, okay, what if we just have to drain it by gravity? How deep would it be at the bottom end? And based on that, we could see that, okay, the alignment 3B, which I'll show you in more detail in a second, alignment 3B seemed to be the best. Then we tested it again and said, okay, let's look at it by gravity. We're going to have everything drain, but all the branch sewers that connect into the different trunk options, how would they connect? And those branch sewers end up driving the trunk sewer actually quite a bit deeper. But in both of those scenarios, alignment 3B seemed to be the best. That seemed to point us to the understanding that that would be our ideal solution, the optimal alignment for what the trunk sewer would be. And from there, we developed a bunch of formal alternatives to evaluate. The Region of Waterloo, as partners on the project study team, they had a preference for alignment 3D because it came through the airport property in a way that was consistent with some of their master planning work, that they understood that, they liked that alternative, that there was value to it. So we ended up carrying both of those alignments forward to look at formal alternatives to evaluate. So this is what they look like. They're, like I said, from north of Menno Street, they're identical. Once you cross Menno and get down Lonsdale Road, at that point where it has a 90-degree bend, alignment 3B bends towards the west, 3D goes to the east. But they both come around the corner and end up at the same endpoint of Fountain Street and Kossuth Road. Now, when we developed these sanitary solutions, we didn't just look at the trunk sewer, but we looked at the solution as the combination of all of the pieces. So all of the alternatives look at all of the pieces. So that includes the trunk sewer, which is approximately 6 kilometers of sewer. Starting at the top end, probably a diameter of about 300 millimeters, bottom end, just over 900 millimeter diameter. So it gets to be big pipe by the bottom end. The solutions also include all of the branch sewers. So it includes the whole network. And then in the solutions, there's also pumping station components as well. So we added those all into all the solutions so that we'd be able to compare apples to apples when we're trying to evaluate which is the best solution. Not that we're just handpicking just one little piece of the different solutions. We wanted to understand them in their entirety and then compare them in their entirety as well. So what we did is we came up with initially 2 scenarios, but then with the 2 alternatives, that was the 2 alignments, that's 4 alternatives. Then we added a 3rd scenario, which ended up with 6 alternatives. So the first scenario, again, we just looked at gravity sewers. So gravity sewers only, and all of the branch sewers and the trunk sewer, everything by gravity to that southwest corner. And what that results in is a rather deep sewer at the bottom end, makes the pumping station at the bottom end very deep. It's a large station, like I said, 679 liters per second. So it's a large station and then very deep. The sewers themselves are also very deep, a number of them as you work yourself down. And that depth really drives a lot of the cost that feeds into the evaluation. The second scenario, what we did was try to mitigate that depth by adding, where appropriate, smaller lift stations, which would raise the elevation of the sewers, lower their depth, lower their cost for installation. There's a cost that's associated with the lift stations, but there's a net benefit for having the shallower system overall. It still resulted in the need for a large pumping station downstream, but the overall offsets were that this was actually a cheaper way to do it because the depth, or the large deep sewers, they're not as deep in the second scenario. And again, there's 2 of those for the 2 different alignments. Both of those alignments, they were based on some pretty standard sewer design parameters. We looked at it and can we tweak that? Can we optimize this a little bit? And we could. We could, within still reasonable professional standards, but we could flatten that sewer a little bit by tweaking the parameters a little bit. And over the long distances that we were working with, that had a significant impact. And we actually managed to find a solution where we could avoid the need for that large, big pumping station downstream, which in itself is a huge benefit. And it kind of brings up one of the key points that we want to just kind of highlight one of the design challenges that exist in this, not just this study, but the entire servicing strategy. Because when you look at a large station like this, one of the things that we did in order to help us in the costing, we created a preliminary design for a baseline station that was based on, we did this near the beginning, of about 500 liters per second with an influent sewer depth of about 10 meters. And based on that, we could then scale things up and down for the different pumping solutions that we looked at. But one of the challenges with a design like this, and you can see, if you can make it on the sketch, there's the large station with a large underground structure. There's also the need for a large underground storage tank. So it's 1 hour of peak flow storage that we have to have for emergency conditions. And those 2 structures themselves have a significant cost. And at that depth, if the sewer is 10 meters deep, you've got another 5 meters of excavation below that for the wet well and all of the housing underneath. So it's a significant excavation. It's in pretty poor soil conditions and specifically groundwater conditions, so it would be difficult construction. And the flow rate of, here we said 500 liters per second, but the actual flow rate of even 679, that's a flow rate that we'll only achieve maybe in 50 years, maybe not in my lifetime. That's something that is going to be development dependent as things evolve over time. Once everything is fully built out, then you would hit that higher flow rate. Day 1, you need a flow rate of maybe 1/10 of that. Well, this station, you can't grow the structure. The majority of the cost of building this would need to get done now. Otherwise, you're going to be rebuilding and rebuilding. They don't grow very well. So the initial capital cost for this structure is pretty high, and the initial use of it is pretty low. So there's a real staging issue there that we're struggling with how to solve. Another key issue that we found, and one of the challenges that we had with designing the sanitary sewer profiles, I think there was 23 or 25, I can't remember exactly, creek crossings throughout the area or throughout the study area that we had to deal with. And the creek crossings really dictate kind of the depths of these sewers, because generally what we want to do is go underneath the creeks. Near the bottom end, about 150 meters north of Kossuth Road on Fountain Street, Randall Drain, just before it gets to the river, it crosses under Fountain Street, and there's a picture of the culvert there. It's a large existing box culvert built in the 60s. Going underneath that, if we go underneath that, we're going to be lower than the target elevation of the sewer that's going to be coming up from the region on Fountain Street at Kossuth. But if we can go over the sewer or over that culvert, that allows us to come at an elevation where we don't need a pumping station anymore. So that's really what we were shooting for. And we can achieve it with some of those tweaks to the design parameters. We were able to achieve that result. And one of the things we'll likely have to do is rebuild that structure, which again, it's over 50 years old. So it's probably not almost due for that. But we would widen it and flatten it to give us a little bit more space that the sewer pipe can go over top of that existing culvert. And that buys us a whole lot of latitude in the design. So as we looked at these different alternatives, and again, there's different ones, 3 scenarios for the 2 different alternatives, so 6 different alternatives in total. Alternatives 5 and 6 were proving to be certainly the best solutions, mostly because they did eliminate that large, deep pumping station at the bottom end. I'll note that they both required 2 smaller pumping stations for some of the branch sewers. But those are, worked into the analysis as part of the costing, as a part of the overall evaluation. As we were evolving it with the project team and through the discussions, we back and forth kind of came to the conclusion that it's hard for us to decide which is the best one because they both have pros and cons. Both of the alternatives required crossing of the airport runways. Now, alternative 3B going towards Fountain Street, that crosses runway 1432, which is the secondary runway, and we cross it actually just north of the existing paved surface. There's plans to extend it in the future, but this sewer, if the timing works out, we would be actually constructing that through the greenfield conditions, which would be still challenging, but certainly easier than having to cross directly under the primary runway, which is paved, and we'd have to do all of that trenchlessly. So there's benefits on that front. The alternative 3D actually works a little bit better for servicing some of the airport lands and some of their future development lands in the future terminal building that is potentially planned for north of the existing runway. So there was back and forth and pros and cons. Eventually, we came to the conclusion as the project team that the best solution is the hybrid of both of those together, recognizing that in the fullness of time, there will be sewers on all of these branches, on all of the roads. What we're showing now is that the trunk sewer would split kind of at that bottom end of the Lonsdale Road and then go around onto those 2 branches. And then the timing for those, that's one of the nice things about this alternative 7, is it gives us lots of flexibility that depending on how the development proceeds, we can pull the trigger on the different parts that we actually need, how and when things evolve. So there's a lot of benefits for this approach. And recognizing the 2 pumping stations that are required, one at the end of Jetliner Court, and then the other one would be at the far east end of Menow Street, which really is only to lift the flows. That you can see the purple area in the northeast corner. Based on the topography, there's a low area there that we just can't get everything to flow by gravity from up there. It needs to be lifted up. So that would be needed for that far northeast area. But that's considered to be kind of in the far distant future, whereas the jetliner area or the jetliner pumping station would be in the more immediate needs. So just to summarize, the stakeholder consultation throughout the project, we've been engaging with the stakeholders and the key players on the project, certainly the region being a big party to that. We issued the notice of commencement early in August 2023. We had the first public meeting in March of this year, a second one in June. Tonight we have this presentation, and the plan is that we would issue the notice of completion ideally by the end of this month so that we can finalize the CEA and move forward. And as Ryan mentioned, the next steps are to move right into detailed design and construction. Hopefully, I think the goal that we put for the project was to have construction done by the end of 2026. Oh, that gives us an extra year. Yes. So with that, I think we'll open it up to questions. And again, thank you for your time.
Anyone have any questions? Councillor Bryant?
Thank you. Through you, I guess, Ryan, whoever can answer it. does the airport pay us taxes? We're looking at doing a significant amount of work with these sewer lines to get them through the airport and around it. And I know they're federally owned, but are we getting any payment, I guess, for this land? Because they're sterilizing our lands for their own use. So are we getting paid for that in any way?
Yeah, through you, Chair Burgess, to you, Councillor Bryant. I think staff is going to have to work on a financing strategy for the project moving forward, just understanding the total dollar amount, understanding that the airport will most likely be a major funding partner. So they will contribute to the trunk sewer as far as we're aware and working towards. But I don't have an answer for you on if the airport actually pays the township taxes at this point, Councillor Bryant.
Mayor Shantz?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. This is looking to send the wastewater to Cambridge. At some point, at least we've talked about it going to Kitchener. Will we be able to use the same trunk lines for if we change it over to Kitchener, or is that going to be a brand new project?
Yeah, so through you, Chair Burgess, to Mayor Shantz. Yes, the infrastructure will stay the same. Right now, the interim solution for Cambridge is the Freeport Sanitary Pumping Station. It's an interim pumping station, which takes the sewage from Cambridge and puts it into the Preston wastewater treatment plant. The extension of the sewer from that terminus right now at the Freeport temporary station will stretch all the way to the Kitchener wastewater treatment plant. So our upstream infrastructure will not change. So there's no additional projects.
I saw Director Collum put his camera on. Were you hoping to answer Councillor Bryan's question on taxes?
Through the chair. So the Airport Authority is a federally regulated authority. So normally they're excluded from property taxes, but many federal and other government agencies do provide payments in lieu of taxes. We call them PILs, essentially. I'm not sure exactly the current status of the Airport Authority in Waterloo. Interestingly enough, there is a regulation in the Assessment Act specifically related to airport authorities, but the list of airport authority excludes the region of Waterloo Airport. It covers Pearson, London, Hamilton, but it doesn't actually specifically mention the Waterloo Airport. So I'll have to look into that and get back to council on exactly the amount of taxes or payment in lieu of taxes that the airport pays in Waterloo.
Councillor Bryant?
Thank you. Through to Qualm. Can you clarify for us then, when you're doing that research, if we get the tax monies in grant form or whatever it is, or if the regional Waterloo is getting it instead of us? Because as we are the property owners, we should be getting something. And I'm just concerned that it's all going to the region and nothing to the township. So if you could find that out for us, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions, Councillor Schwint?
I know I'm jumping ahead here, but do we have an order of magnitude on the budget construction this would be? I'm assuming our portion will come out of development charges, and do they balance somewhat, or what's the financial impact potentially?
Through the chair to Councillor Schwint. Like I mentioned before, we are looking to come up with a financing strategy that we will bring back to council ahead of any tendering of this work. But in terms of magnitude, based off the cost estimates from Associate Engineering, we are looking at tens of millions of dollars to install this pipeline. As far as I'm aware, development charges would pick up a portion of that.
I was going along with what you're saying, just great until the very last comment, pick up a portion of that.
Sorry, to clarify, I was speaking about the cost sharing between the partners. So I understand that the Woolwich's portion would be development charge eligible, if that's the clarity you're looking for.
And have we done the math? Let's say if this is a $40 million project with theoretical DC charges in the greater Breslau area will be in that neighborhood.
I'd have to defer to finance for that if Column's available to answer the impacts to development charges.
Just through the chair to Councillor Schwinn, we haven't developed a formal financing strategy, as Ryan kind of alluded to. If we are looking at tens of millions of dollars, we want to really understand all the financial implications. There could be potential grant implications as well. We could be eligible for grants. There's cost sharing, there's development charges. There's also the cash flow need to fund this project in advance of potentially collecting development charges from Breslau development. So we really need to work out that whole financing strategy and present that to council.
Right, Councillor Schwinn.
And changing gears again, is a common practice, the rule of thumb, how far do you pump or gravity flow sewage before you build another treatment center? Is there a certain size you want to get to before you build another one, or is bigger always better? Can you walk us through the thought process previous to this study?
Yeah, through you, Chair Burgess, to Councillor Swin. So in terms of treatment, it's my understanding that that's Region of Waterloo. They handle all the treatment. I don't think the township would look to ever install their own treatment plant. It's a lot of systemic knowledge that you need, and you need a lot of staff to run that. So I think that would be a big issue for the township. In terms of how long you can run a gravity sewer, as long as you have proper slopes, you can run it infinitely as far as I'm concerned. That's why we're making sure we're meeting at least our minimum requirements for drops through sewers and minimum slopes, so that that sewer will work effectively to transporting that sewage to where it needs to go.
Any other questions? I have two, if I may. Not exactly sure how the lift stations work, but is there redundancy built in? Like if one of these were to go down, what does that look like? Because you mentioned there's only an hour at peak storage available.
Yeah, so typical for a design practice for a pumping station or a lift station, we would look to have the emergency storage, so the 1 hour peak flow storage, as well as an emergency generator on site. So if there's power failure, we would have a natural gas generator on site, typical of the North Sanitary pumping station and our other pumping stations within the township. You have those emergency generators in case there's a failure. So you had kind of dual protection. So you have the peak flow storage as well as your emergency generator to pump that sewage when the power goes out.
And is there ever like mechanical failures that you have to have a replacement? What would that look like?
So typically those pumping stations have multiple pumps in them. So you have a standby pump, a duty pump. So if there is a failure of a pump, you always have a backup. And those pumps are serviced regularly. They check to make sure that they're functioning appropriately.
Thank you. And lastly, is there a large cost to maintaining a lift station, like long-term compared to, I assume that was built into the calculation, doing gravity versus a lift station? Just wondering what the long-term cost on that is.
Yeah, sure. There's definitely long-term operating and maintenance costs. They were definitely built into the full analysis. And that's why I think having the smaller lift stations throughout the East Side lands is having that instead of having the large station at the southwest corner makes sense, because those operating costs are less, and you'll get you get larger utilization of those stations on day one, so you're not having those issues like Dwayne alluded to with having a large station with hardly any flow into it. But we will be having the standard township operation and maintenance costs for those pump stations moving forward.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Yeah, Councillor Schmidt.
The finances are coming front in mind to me again. Looks like we've got 1.5 years before, in theory, want to begin construction on this, and we're not sure the cost or the funding source yet. Are we confident that we can get that background work done in the next 18 months? And assuming we're looking for partners, or not partners, but grants from upper levels of government, how do they typically feed into projects like this? So last minute, do they just walk up with a check? Is it a long, tedious process? What's staff's prior experience?
Yeah, so in terms of the grant, I'll take that one. Staff have applied for the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund grant through, we tried through the first intake and we were not as successful. They opened up a second intake for that fund, which is up to $35 million of funding through the provincial government. We have applied for that second intake and we are hoping that we were successful for that. So that would be a big, up to $35 million. And that is actually, it's not typically the way grants are done. It's actually an upfront, so it's milestone payments. I think it's on approval of the application, you get like 25% of the money upfront, and then there's milestone payments. So we wouldn't have to upfront that money, as far as I'm aware, if we were successful with that grant. And sorry, what was your first question, Councillor Schmidt? You're okay with that? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cadeau.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question kind of stems into the question that you had about financing. You're asking for an endorsement on a recommended alternative, alternative number 7, but we have no information as to how much any of these alternatives could potentially cost. So I guess the question is, based on these 7 preferred solutions that you put forward, are any absorbently more or less expensive than the other, or are they all kind of within the ballpark same expense?
Yeah, through you, Chair Burgess, to you, Councillor Cadeau. There's quite a variety of costs. That large lift station for the first few alternatives is cost prohibitive. It's a major cost. And like Dwayne said, you can't even utilize it on day one. So that was a big issue for us. I think overall costing, alternate 7, I think did flush out as the overall lowest cost for the alternatives reviewed.
Any last questions? All right, seeing none, we do have a recommendation here. Would somebody like to move that? All right, moved by Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Mayor Shantz. Any other discussion on that? See none, I will call that to vote. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thanks a lot, guys. All right, moving on. Do any members of council wish to give a report or any updates? Seeing none. Any discussion on outstanding activity lists? Nothing there. No notice of motions. That brings us to the initial adjournment here. That brings us to the end of the committee of the whole portion of this evening. A special council meeting will immediately follow this adjournment. Would anyone like to motion to adjourn the committee of the whole? Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Schwint. All those in favor, and that's carried. Go ahead, Mayor Shantz.
Okay, we'll now start a special meeting of council. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest for this meeting? Seeing none. Recommendations from Committee of the Whole today that the following consent item be approved and received for information, and that is the summary of recommendations from today's Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Cadeau. All those in favor? And that is carried. The clerk has a memo outlining the recommended amendments to the minutes. Would anyone move a motion to adopt the minutes as amended? And that is the minutes from September 24th. Moved by Councillor Bryant, second by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? And that is carried. We have a staff report, and I'll welcome Executive Officer Rayanne Bauman to present the joint RFP contract for a shared public engagement tool for municipalities within Waterloo region. That's a mouthful. Over to you, Ray.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. We are requesting pre-budget approval to increase the communications operating budget to allow the township to continue to offer our residents and communities with a digital engagement platform. With our current contract ending on December the 31st, the joint regional Engage WR working group began exploring new vendors, with Social Pinpoint being selected as the preferred vendor. Shifting to Social Pinpoint platform will give us more interactive engagement tools such as mapping, vision boards, storyboards, surveys, Q&As, and over 30 widgets. To increase the budget is mainly because Woolwich will be entering into our own standalone contract instead of under the umbrella of the Regional Waterloo, which is due to the volume of content and engagement that we have on our platform. Since our launch in January of 2023, we have had over 26,185 visits to our Engage Woolwich page. I thank you for your time and am open to any questions from council.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Rayanne. So if we're negotiating this on our own, is the region also looking at different services, or are they sticking with Engage Waterloo Region?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Cadeau, we would all be shifting to Social Pinpoint so that we can maintain a standalone, consistent branding across the region.
Councillor Schwinn.
Have we been, I guess, happy with the engagement we've received through that online platform? I know the website, my experience has been people use it. Are we getting, I guess, engagement through Engage? That doesn't come out right, but anyway, are we getting two-way engagement through the Engage WR? Or has that been a issue?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Schwinn, yes, we have been doing a lot of engagement through Engage WR, specifically with we saw it through our strategic plan, and planning is using it quite a bit for their half funding endeavors as well. So it is being utilized a lot more. It does allow us to also, through Bill 109, have more availability of information to with planning applications as well. And that's not capabilities we currently have on our website.
Anyone else? Councillor Grant.
I'm just wondering how we're currently using Engage WR and how we see this new platform, how we could expand upon our engagement platform. So I'm assuming that part of the benefit to this new program is that we have more avenues in which to engage with the public.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Grant. Yes, with this actual new platform, we do have a lot more engagement tools available to us. They do have one specific to budget that you might be interested next year if we go this route, but there are more things available on the engagement tool and widget side that we can push out more engagement type things than what we currently can with our standalone platform.
Thank you.
Councillor Cadeau.
Just to follow up on that, a common criticism is that people don't know what's going on. They don't know decisions that are being made. Is there an opportunity for us to be proactive if we were to implement this and try to reach people where they're at, rather than just requiring them to come to our site to give their feedback? And I like even an email sign up about something that they're interested in, and then they get that questionnaire sent to their email to respond to. Is that like built into the system?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Cadeau. There are certain things built into the system that can send out emails. Some of it is based on registering for a specific project page. If council chose to have kind of a feedback standalone project page that is open to engagement specifically on what residents would like to see, that is 100% something we can set up on this platform that would then provide us with a multitude of information.
Councillor Bryant and then Councillor Schwinn.
Thank you. I know we're already doing social media. Does this have the ability to do any linking into that social media for putting out messaging, or do you have to still do it independently?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Bryant. Yes, there's actually integration with this new platform from social media to Social Pinpoint that we can link a lot of it back and forth, that it's not done quite so manually anymore. Thank you.
Councillor Schwint.
Playing devil's advocate here, what would happen if we did nothing? And if we relied on our website for push and social media for pushing information out, and relied on emails coming in and phone calls to us fortunate counselors or staff on hearing residents' thoughts. Thinking about budget, that's $30,000. We have to look at things critically. I'm just kind of curious what would the downfall be?
Through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Schwint, if we chose to do nothing right now, we would essentially lose the Engage WR platform and access to it. We would have to push all our infrastructure projects and planning projects back onto our website and have to change the way we currently do that to try and meet regulations through like Bill 109. As far as engagement, we would go back to a very manual, form-based or email-based inquiries specifically to council members or staff directly, where the current Engage platform or Social Pinpoint platform gives us a database that we can run reports and stuff off specific things, where you go to the manual, you're losing some of that capabilities.
Councillor Cadeau.
I'll add from a customer service perspective, in an efficiency perspective, the email system may be less than desirable. If we're looking at any expenditures that we should be cutting back, I don't think hearing from members of the public should be one of those. The public is why we're sitting here. It's we need their opinions, we need their perspectives on things. It's how do we get that message the best way? And I think that's what you're getting at. You're not trying to say that we don't need to hear from the public. It's what is the most efficient way. I don't think email is the most efficient. I think that this probably is going to be one of the most efficient, especially with some of the integration that I've heard about. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Councillor Schwint.
If I can apply, email for sure is not most efficient way. Phone calls aren't either. But when I think about the last year and a half on council, almost 2 years, most planning reports have emails attached, and we've heard from residents. We all get phone calls or emails. I haven't seen too many planning decisions that have an Engaged WR summary attached to them that we're forming decisions on. And while I really would like to use Engaged WR or this new process, we can't force people to do it. They're going to keep on doing emails. So how are we going to, I guess, push or steer people to that system? Otherwise, we're essentially spending $10,000 a year, not getting the benefits we want to get from it. And I want to make this work. I just want to make sure that we have a process in place so it's utilized and not just making us feel good.
I know I've seen report, and I'm just trying to separate township and regional things, surveys and so on that I believe would have come from Engage WR. So I don't know if staff, Jared or Deanne, maybe can speak to how it's been. You're pointing. Deanne, yeah.
So I can speak to that a little bit. We do use the Engage platform a lot. We use it for any kind of larger applications, any kind of larger planning projects that we're working on, things like the secondary plan. We've posted surveys there for our housing needs assessment that will be coming to council next week, and we actually did get quite a bit of response there. It's also a platform that allows us to post larger documents, studies, maps, give more information. So maybe some things people don't even have to come to us with questions because they can get their questions answered through that Engage page. So I would say from a planning perspective, it's very useful for us to communicate any kind of development applications that are larger in nature, and also get public feedback through that mechanism.
If you were to just pick a project and have to manually get that kind of input, Can you, and I know maybe this isn't fair, but can you quantify in some way what kind of people power that would take?
Difficult question.
Maybe it's not fair. If you can't answer it, that's okay.
Yeah, I would say it's a lot of stuff that people ask us for with respect to larger studies that we refer them to the page rather than trying to set up a FTP site to transfer larger files, or rather than a lot of emails back and forth that end up too large. So we do use it for that kind of larger process. We do refer people to that site a lot as well. So timelines, next steps, things like that. We provide all that information through our Engage pages. So we, yeah, there's a lot of information that I think we're directing people to that would take us staff hours to get back to people on. And I can't quantify the number, but I would say that it does save staff time.
Thank you. Jared and then Bonnie, Councillor Bryant.
I think I would just concur with Director Fries on that too. And I'm just thinking of a current project right now would be the Breslau Drain 1 project. It's a 2-year multi-project, spanned a number of years in design. And I would say that has, we are still referring people back to the Engage page. So appreciate there's some people that just need to hear that again. And the nice thing about it is that they can go back in time and see everything that's been there. So on our website, pieces are up, pieces are down. It's disjointed. Some groups are way better at it than others. I am not going to sit here and say that I'm the best. I lose emails all the time. It's unfortunate to say, but it's never going to stop that. We'll always have that customer service piece, but now it's more specific and streamlined to who it goes to. And the Engage page, I would say, has stopped a whole bunch of emails coming. So I think that's what it does. You never eliminate the email. That's always a way to get a hold of us. So is the phone. Some people just prefer that. But a lot of people are not just reaching out now because there is all that information available that we never used to have to publish before, or have the ability to publish. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach. And as we grow and deal with larger and larger projects, this is a great tool for public engagement for sure. It's just what I wanted to advocate for.
Thank you. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Being on the HPAC, the Heritage Committee at the region, we did see a lot of that and they would feed it through to us. So I think a lot of it's just an education piece. You'd have to put it on the website and just make sure the public's aware of this. And I think that's maybe what's lacking. The public just doesn't have the knowledge that this is out there right now. And I think if we start giving them the information, they'll start utilizing it more.
Director Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. I actually was going to just jump on what Councillor Bryant said and say there's over 40 active projects on our Engage page right now. And one of them that we're advertising for, and we're really trying to get that message out there, so I'll use this opportunity if you don't mind, is the council's pre-budget survey that you saw in your packages. I think it was in September. That's now out for the public. So we would encourage that's live. We would encourage anyone who's interested in providing feedback on the budget to sign up for that survey and let us know your thoughts.
Thank you. Right.
And through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Bryant, just for some of your comments that you had around promoting it. One of the things that we're looking to do regionally is if all municipalities move forward with this platform, is to do some joint media release and messaging around it to push registration and knowledge of it. Now that we are able to easily more integrate it into our website as well, the hope is to have a single click on our homepage to get people where they need to go.
Councillor Cadeau.
I just had a question regarding the cost and what the difference is between Engage Waterloo Region and Social Pinpoint, either on an annual basis or what do we have, a 3-year contract with them? Are we seeing significant cost savings, or are we breaking even? Are we paying a little bit more to access more services? I'm just trying to see where we kind of fall down.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Cadeau, our previous budget for Engage WR for, it was Bang the Table, now is Granicus, was $2,500. And that pricing was based from when the region did the original contract. Townships were not in a position to have standalone pages. So they were able to negotiate having us included if before the end of the contract we wanted to come on board. we were limited in what we can do on our hub because we do still fall under the region's main hub. So they are kind of the overseer of ours. We don't have all of the ability to do things. We have to go back to the region and ask them to remove things. Going standalone right now, we're given an opportunity to have full capabilities of our hub, and we would be the admins of our own. As well as Clerk Smith did say, we have over 40 projects that we are not a small user to be trying to go under an umbrella of the region again. We're in a position that we need to be on our own due to the content and the engagement that we do get.
Just to follow up to that, will we have the staff resources to be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish on our end to make this successful?
Through Mayor Shantz, Councilor Perdue, 100%. Right now, the way it will work is social pinpoint will actually take all of, we're lucky, we haven't been on that long, so all of our data will migrate over. As far as training, they do all of that, and each department currently has a representative that does maintain their department's engaged pages. They will have training, and I will have a little bit more than them, but I'll still be the same resource I am to the township. That won't change, and it won't be any added. It'll just be a little bit of a learning curve getting used to a new platform.
Councillor Schwint.
So going from $2,500 a year to $10,000 a year is significant, but I understand the cost benefits to it. I just would like to see us monitor it in some form over the next year or two to understand how many hits or engagements or whatever tracking method we use, that we understand how useful it is and how we can keep shifting people to it.
Is there a facility to provide those kind of statistics easily?
Yes, 100% actually. That's one of the reasons we kind of are going this route, is because the analytics are so much more with this platform than what we currently have, that we can actually dig down deeper into specific projects as well. So.
Okay. Not seeing, yeah.
I would move the recommendation.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Costello, second by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Now we have a motion that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaw numbers 61-2024 to 64-2024, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. Do you want me to read them? Do you guys have them in front of you? They're basically the repealing of bylaw, appointment of municipal law enforcement officers, two of them, Devon Shaw and Pratibha Sethi, and a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of council today. Councillor Schwint, Councillor Burgess, all those in favor, and that is carried. Thank you. And that concludes this special council meeting. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Burgess, Councillor Grant, all those in favor? And that's carried. We will meet again in regular session on October 22nd. And in closing, council thanks all who participated, attended, or tuned in to the meetings tonight. And council, please stay connected on Zoom until the live stream has stopped. Good night, everyone.